welcome to Mindvalley University. It's such a
Christian,
pleasure
what
to
a
see
joy.
you here.
What a joy
So
to see
for
you
those
again.
of you who don't know Dr. Amen, let me just tell you about this amazing man. So Dr. Amen, we like to be really informal here at Mindvalley University. Many of the people in the audience, we've met each other at countless events. So I like to be really real about this. So I was interviewing Dr. Daniel Amen for the Mindvalley podcast. This was about 2 months ago. Quarantine had just started, and I asked him in the podcast to share some of his advice on two things that were deeply concerning me. One is I had a relative who was aging and was starting to experience neurological disorder, and I wanted to get his advice. And so he shared his tips, a concept called Bright Minds on the Mindvalley podcast that is mind-blowing, folks, and I want everyone to listen to it. We won't cover that here because the recording is on the Mindvalley podcast. Go listen to that on Spotify. But the second thing that Dr. Amen spoke about was really revealing. It was on how do we boost our immunity. And right now, with COVID-19 surging across the United States, it is important that we boost our immunity. By some estimates, and I'm not saying this to instill fear or anything, I'm just saying what scientists are recognizing right now. I have friends who have been infected by COVID-19, and we know that if you are immunocompromised, the effects can be far worse. But if you keep your immunity high, never before has it been important to keep our immunity high. And I wanted to bring Dr. Daniel Amen here to speak to us about what can we do to be performing at our best health, to have the best practices in place, what supplements, what exercises, what food, basically all the wisdom you can dish out, Dr. Amen, because never before has it been this important to stay healthy. So we're ready to begin.
Well, thank you so much. When the pandemic hit, I wrote the night that it hit for me, which was March 10th, was mental hygiene is just as important as washing your hands. That we need to disinfect our thoughts, and I call them ants, automatic negative thoughts, because every time you have a thought, your brain releases chemicals, every single time. And fearful thoughts, anxious thoughts, negative thoughts, hateful thoughts release chemicals that make your whole body feel bad and hurt your immune system. And so it's critical to develop mental discipline because it actually helps your body and your brain. So where you direct your thoughts matters. And whenever we evaluate someone at our 8, soon to be 9 Amen clinics around the United States, we always evaluate them in 4 big circles. So we talk about their biology, and there's some very specific biological things you can do to enhance your immune system. Your best defense against COVID-19 is not going to be a vaccine. Now, a vaccine may be helpful, but it's not your best defense. Your best defense is your immune system. And how do you get that healthy from a biological standpoint is you make sure your vitamin D level is middle range to high range normal. People who have low vitamin D levels have higher mortality, higher death rates from COVID-19.
So is that the number one, is that the top tip, Dr. Amen, vitamin D?
Well, it's one of the top tips. You know, okay. I have one for each of these 4 circles, but it's on the top of my list. Every day I take 7,000 international units of vitamin D. Now, for everybody, it's different depending on the amount of sunshine you get, depending on how dark your skin is. People with darker skin actually need more sunlight to get a healthy vitamin D level. So for me, I need 7,000 units a day.
So a question here, Dr. Amen. So in our past conversation, you mentioned vitamin D and vitamin D3. Is there a difference?
Yes, only take vitamin D3 because that's the active form And I recommend everybody, if they can, get your level tested. Normal's between 30 and 100. I like my patients between 50 and 100. And I keep mine about 80.
Okay.
And it's just a simple thing to do that reminds you to do the other things. Vitamin C.
Now, and just on that, you said we should have our vitamin D levels tested, and it should be between 30 and 100. But what measurement is that?
So it's just a vitamin D level. It's called 25 hydroxy vitamin D. Your doctor can order it.
And we should be getting between 30 and 100. Now, I read somewhere that darker skinned people who have moved to northern climates where there is less levels of sunlight are more likely to be susceptible to COVID-19 because their skin is producing less vitamin D3, right? And I read somewhere, I'm curious to know your thoughts on this, that this is one of the reasons why, if you're African American in North America, the death rate from COVID-19 is about 3 times as high. And it's also higher if you're Indian like me or any type of brown or dark skin. Do you think that's correct? Okay,
and there's actually a study from a Black population in the Caribbean that immigrates to England has a higher level of psychotic disorders. So not only does it affect your immune system, it also affects your brain. And that's really important. And it's just basically know your vitamin D and either get more sun or take a supplement to get your level, not crazy high, but high normal. So normal's 30 to 100. I want my patients 50 to 100.
I see. Now, if you are darker skinned, does that mean you need to take more vitamin D supplements? You said you're taking 7,000 IU a day. If let's say we're Indian or Black, do we need to take more?
Depends on your level and how your body processes it. That's why I'm just a big fan of get it tested and then optimize it. And it's so important. There's one study that said people who are over 40 vitamin D level had half the risk of cancer of those who were under 20.
Wow.
And when I first tested mine, and I live in Southern California where the sun is out all the time, my level was 17. And so for a long time, I took 10,000 units a day, but I think you test it, you take a certain level of vitamin D, and then you test it again, because you can't change what you don't measure. It's why we do imaging at Amen Clinics, because if you don't measure it, how do you know? So from a biological standpoint, vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc, but another really important thing, 60% of your immunity is in your gut. And so making sure your intestinal health, call it the microbiome, those 100 trillion bugs that are in your gut, are healthy. So it means what you eat really matters. And you also don't want to be overweight. I just got a new study accepted for publication that showed as your weight goes up, the function of your brain goes down, but the fat on your belly, which is more common with the chronic stress we've been experiencing for the last 4.5 months, belly fat, it's putting more fat on our belly, which increases inflammation and decreases our immunity. So diet is really important.
Wow. Okay, so that's really interesting. I've read studies that suggested it, but now it is a confirmed fact that if we put on weight, it's also going to lead to a decrease in brain functioning.
Yes, and this is my third study. I published it, and this is on 35,000 scans. And there's literally, the graphs will horrify you. Every area of the brain, there's a linear correlation. As your weight goes up, blood flow and function of your brain goes down. And it's why initially about 10 years ago, I dropped 25 pounds because I don't want a smaller brain.
And what's happening right now is, as a result of the pandemic, in a study by WebMD, 47% of women report gaining weight, 22% of men report gaining weight. So when we're quarantined and we don't have access to a gym, a lot of that is happening as well. So let's go back to the next tip. You mentioned probiotics and gut health. You mentioned that we need to be conscious of our weight, which is perfect. For those of you who do want to lose weight, WildFit is by far the best program I found, and you just heard Eric Edmead speak. So I strongly recommend WildFit. Dr. Amen, what else would you recommend for gut health? What are things we can look at or practices we can adopt?
So you want to love it and then take care of these 100 trillion bugs. You almost think of them as we talk with our 8-year-old daughter about, but think of them like pets. You have to take care of them in order for them to give you the love you want,
right.
Which means feeding them prebiotic foods. So think of foods with fiber. Avoid foods raised with pesticides, because what do pesticides kill? Bugs. They often kill the bugs in your gut. So eating organic, many colorful fruits and vegetables a day, along with probiotic foods. Think of kimchi and sauerkraut, which is my favorite. Can be helpful. Avoid antibiotics if they're not absolutely essential, because they can do damage in your microbiome.
And what about, in our last conversation, doctor, you mentioned garlic, onion, and mushrooms.
They help to boost immunity, and they're part of really excellent prebiotic foods. So prebiotics are basically foods that feed the probiotics.
I see. So take care of your probiotics, eat kimchi, eat sauerkraut, but also pay attention to prebiotics. And in your case, you mentioned in our earlier conversation, garlic, onion, mushrooms. Make these a part of your diet.
Correct. And mushrooms, there are a number of different kinds of mushrooms that help boost immunity.
Okay, are those three, is there something special about those three? Because you're really specific on garlic, onion, mushrooms.
Just the research with them found that they help to boost immunity.
And I just want to say, this is one thing I really appreciate about Dr. Daniel Amen. Everything he talks about is science-based. For those of you who don't know him, Google him. Firstly, Dr. Daniel Amen has 10 New York Times bestsellers. His research on brain imaging was ranked number 19 out of the top 100 stories in science in 2015 by Discover magazine. His health clinics across the country see 4,000 patient visits each month. I have committed to making a visit to an Amen clinic when I am able to visit the United States again, because I think this is so important. And again, I just want to mention, before we continue, I just want to mention, check out Dr. Daniel Amen's new book, The End of Mental Illness, How Neuroscience is Transforming Psychiatry and Helping Prevent or Reverse Mood and Anxiety Disorder, ADHD, addictions, PTSD, psychosis, personality disorder, and more. Okay, so he draws on the latest findings of neuropsych to challenge outdated psychiatric paradigms and help people like you guys take control and improve the health of your own brain. And remember, your brain is so important. Most of us forget about brain health because we can't see our brain. So we focus on our muscles, we focus on our abs, but we forget that brain health is supremely important. Dr. Amen, so back to, that was a commercial break to mention Dr. Amen's book, because I really want to make sure that you guys are aware of this brilliant man's work. Let's go back to prebiotics. So we were talking about garlic, onion, mushroom. What else should we pay attention to?
Well, for prebiotics, just think of foods that have fiber in them.
Okay.
Artichokes, for example, are really good. Jicama is another really great prebiotic. Apples are excellent. Root vegetables like sweet potatoes and carrots.
What about bananas?
You have to be careful with bananas because they're higher in the glycemic index. And the glycemic index is how quickly does a food turn to sugar. And the faster it turns to sugar, you know, we had talked about the African-American community have a higher incidence of death. Part of it is because there's a higher incidence of obesity and diabetes.
I see.
Thing of diabetes. And if you want to maintain your weight, if you struggle with your weight, you want to eat mostly low glycemic fruit. Think blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, apples, peaches, rather than high glycemic fruit. Dates are the worst, pineapple, and bananas. If you're going to have a banana, and bananas are loaded with good things, a little bit on the green side rather than on the brown side, because you want the fiber but not the richness of sugar.
That's amazing. All right. Now, you also speak about zinc and vitamin C. Let's talk about those.
So zinc is absolutely critical, and there's a large deficit in zinc in the population. And so 20 milligrams a day during this time, I think, is essential. It really helps your immune system fight off viruses. Vitamin C is so important. We often have a deficiency of it, and it just doesn't cause scurvy, which is a pretty severe disorder that is actually making a comeback, that British sailors would get very sick, and they realized if they put limes on board, oranges, lemons, that their health would be much better. But because of the lack of fruits and vegetables people eat a day, 90% of the population does not have 5 servings of fruits and vegetables.
I see.
The minimum required to get the nutrition you need. That vitamin C, especially liposomal vitamin C, because it is better absorbed if you're going to take a supplement.
And how do we get liposomal vitamin C?
So you can get it as a supplement. There's a number of companies that make it. And I recommend during this time, 2,000 milligrams a day of vitamin C, because it'll really strengthen your immune system. You really can't take too much. You'll just get rid of what you don't use. But I take 2,000 units a day.
Now, for those of you listening, I want you to pay attention.
2,000 milligrams, sorry.
What I'm actually giving you is a shopping list so that you can be at your peak state, given we're in the midst of a pandemic. So I went to a pharmacy here in Estonia because I'd heard about vitamin D, but I wasn't aware of the nuance. I wasn't aware that it was D3. I wasn't aware that I should be taking 7,000. I wasn't aware that my normal should be between 30 and 100. So what you're learning here is, with accurate precision from one of the top medical minds in the United States, exactly what supplements you should be taking, exactly what you should be adding to your diet. Let's do a quick recap. In terms of supplements, you want to get zinc, 20 milligrams a day, vitamin C, preferably liposomal vitamin C, 2,000 milligrams per day. You want to get vitamin D3, 7,000 IU of vitamin D3 daily is what Dr. Daniel Amen recommends. But you want to go higher if you are dark-skinned like myself in a northern climate. And you want to make sure that you take care of your gut health. Probiotics means eating kimchi. Probiotic care means taking care of your gut health. Pay attention to kimchi, sauerkraut, and pay attention to prebiotics, garlic, onion, mushrooms. Think of foods that have fiber. Focus on low glycemic foods like blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, and apples. Did I get everything right? Am I a good student?
You're a great student. Just one correction. I take that 7,000 units a day because I know my level, and that gives me an optimal level.
Right.
That's not for everybody. Some people, if they take 2,000, it's fine. Some people may need more. It's just important, know your level. So if you don't have a level, I think taking 5,000 units a day is fine. I have never, not once in 40 years, seen that ever cause a problem for anybody.
Great.
But you want to know your level. I'm just
Now,
watching the chat as we go along and just wanting
great.
to make sure people
Yeah,
hear
and that's amazing. We now
really
have 1,600 people tuned in live. So I hope you guys are getting a good deal out of this. Now, if you have read any of Dr. Amen's work, if you've been to the Amen Clinic, please share your messages of support so other people might consider picking up Dr. Amen's book or visiting the clinic. Now, the next thing, Dr. Amen, that you spoke about is the importance of sleep. Let's talk about sleep.
Well, if you want a healthy immune system, it's critical to have healthy sleep. When you sleep 7, 8 hours a night, it turns on 700 health-promoting genes. When you don't sleep, you have lower blood flow to your brain, which ultimately will mean more bad decisions. And ultimately, it's the quality of your decisions that determine the health and success of your life. And so when I don't sleep, so I have to take an early morning flight, I'm very careful not to make any big decisions that day.
Right. And I believe Tom Rath in the book Eat, Move, Sleep said that science has shown that if you deprive yourself of as much as 90 minutes of sleep, just 90 minutes of sleep, your brain functioning is down by 1/3. That's 1/3 your brain that isn't functioning properly in terms of decision making.
So get this statistic. Soldiers who got 7 hours of sleep were 98% accurate on the range. Those who got only 6 hours of sleep were only 50% accurate on the range. Those that got 5 hours of sleep were 35% accurate on the range. And those who only got 4 hours of sleep. And I worry about this because I consult with police departments and the military. Those who got 4 hours of sleep, not uncommon, were only 15% accurate on the range. So when it comes to decision making and turning your immunity on, making sleep a priority is critical.
So what are some of the tips that you can give us to boost our sleep? I've heard of magnesium, CBD oil. What would you recommend?
Yeah, I'm not so much a fan, this will get me haters, of CBD oil yet. It's been unleashed onto the world as safe, and I'm not 100% convinced. You know, cocaine was unleashed onto the world. It used to be in Coca-Cola. And we went, okay, no, that's not a good thing. So magnesium, I'm a huge fan. Magnesium, melatonin, 5-HTP, Gaba, theanine, really great research behind those supplements is sleep. But ultimately, sleep, like brain health, is 3 things. You have to care about it, avoid anything that hurts it, and then do things that help it. So don't exercise at night, kill the caffeine in your diet at least after 12 o'clock. A light room disrupts sleep. A noisy room disrupts sleep. A warm room disrupts sleep. So dark, quiet, cooler. And then I'm a huge fan of hypnosis for sleep. When I was an intern at the Walter Reed Army Medical Center, I'd already taken a month elective as a medical student in hypnosis. All of my other interns would just pass out sleeping pills like candy, and I would use hypnosis. And it was so powerful. My first published papers are Parkinsonian tremor went away in a hypnotic trance. And
that's amazing.
Heart rhythm normalized in a hypnotic trance.
That's amazing.
Just directing your mind in a healthy way can be positive.
So just a quick tip on that. For those of you who are members of Mindvalley All Access, check out Everyday Bliss by the British hypnotherapist Paul McKenna. there is a trance audio in there called, it's literally just called hypnotic trance. It's in the warm-up. I believe it's day 3 of the warm-up. I've done that meditation. Several of my team members have done the meditation. Several people have said that this is one of the most powerful meditations they've ever done in terms of just deeply relaxing your body. It's a 3D meditation, so there are different sounds being played in your ears at different times. It's very mysterious, but try it out. It's part of your All Access. It's an Everyday Bliss by Paul McCann. Okay, if you have tried that, just share your comments there. Dr. Daniel Amen, so let's talk about magnesium, melatonin, GABA, 5-HTP, because I want to make sure people walk out of this with an accurate list of what they need to get from their pharmacy, right? But also, if people are on a budget, of these 4, magnesium, melatonin, GABA, 5-HTP, what would you recommend if you could choose 2? Is there science on that?
I would choose magnesium,
okay,
because so many people are low in it. And I would start with 200 milligrams. And then I would raise it over time, 200 milligrams a night, until you got the best effect, or diarrhea. When you have too much magnesium, your body will tell you, sort of like if you have too much vitamin C, your body will tell you. Melatonin actually surprised us. More is
sorry, Dr.
not
Daniel,
better.
you said start with 200 milligrams of magnesium and raise it to what?
And then I'd go up by 200 milligrams a night until I either had the best response, I slept well, or I ended up with a side effect like diarrhea. And the kind matters. Magnesium oxide is not good, cheap, not good. Citrate or glycinate are the 2 that we use in the clinic, and are the best absorbed. There's also one called magnesium threonate, but it's the most expensive.
It's called magnesium what? Magnesium glycate, you said?
Glycinate, 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 or citrate.
Citrate?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Awesome. Now, the next one is, so now we have 3 more options: melatonin, GABA, 5-HTP. What would you say is the second most important?
Melatonin, but not in small doses, not high doses. So a lot of people will get 5 milligrams, and it's generally too much for most people. What is more physiological is 0.3 milligrams to 1 milligram. And if it's going to work, it's generally going to be at a smaller dose. Now, what you also want to do is turn off your gadgets, because blue light decreases the production of melatonin. So when the sun goes down, you should put blue light blockers on all of your gadgets, whether it's your laptop or your phone, your iPad, because otherwise you're just creating your own problem.
I see. Now, what about GABA and 5-HTP?
So I'm a fan of both of them. And some people go, GABA doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier, but it works in your gut on your vagal tone, on your vagus nerve, to send signals to your brain to calm down. So I'm a huge fan of GABA, and generally I use 750 milligrams of GABA. And 5-HTP helps those of you who are worriers, who have trouble letting go of negative thoughts or negative behaviors. And 50 to 200 milligrams is generally the dose. From 5-HTP turns into serotonin, which turns into melatonin. So 5-HTP is often very effective, especially if you tend to be sad and worry at night. And a lot of people are worrying at night.
Amazing. This is so useful. Now, I've heard that melatonin if you take it too much, you become dependent on it. Have you heard anything of that sort? And it can actually have the opposite effect?
Not at low doses, but at high doses, it can actually begin to turn off the production of it. But I think physiological doses. Now, with all of these things, the first thing to do is not take medication or a supplement. The first thing to do is get your habits right. So love your sleep, avoid anything as we talked about. Alcohol is another one. Alcohol and marijuana both can interfere with sleep. And yes, it may help you go to sleep, but both of them decrease REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, which is healing sleep. And ultimately you end up tired, and then you end up dependent on alcohol or marijuana or CBD. And I'm just not a fan of that. I want you to get your habits right. So you're never going to become addicted to hypnosis, for example, or meditation, or sleep enhancing music, or learning how to settle yourself down at night.
That's amazing. Now, and for those of you who are on Mindvalley All Access, don't forget you have access to Dr. Michael Bruce's Mastery of Sleep program. It's a 3-week program, and it teaches you everything about sleep optimization, and it teaches you how to truly master your sleep. Now, the final thing, Dr. Daniel Amen, that you spoke about in terms of boosting our immunity is it's kind of unusual. You spoke about watching comedy movies. Let's speak about that before we wrap up.
So your mind really does matter, and the quality of your thoughts enhance your immunity or damage your immunity. And so lots of stress is going to cause a surge of cortisol production, which will put fat around your belly. Negative thoughts do that as well. And so programming your brain with happy thoughts, hopeful thoughts, funny thoughts. There's actually research out of the University of California, Irvine, that watching comedies can enhance your immune system markers. And one of my favorite books of all time is called The Anatomy of an Illness by Norman Cousins, who is a very famous magazine editor. And he had an autoimmune disorder called ankylosing spondylitis, where his immune system was attacking his spine. And all the medications didn't work. He locked himself in a room for 500 hours with comedies and found at the end of that time, his autoimmune disorder was dramatically better. And over the next year, it went away. So what goes in your mind matters to how your body functions, especially your immunity. So watching the news and all the hateful stuff, the news isn't the news. People don't understand that. The news is not the news. The news is there to drive clicks to make these companies money.
Right.
So they're going to make you sad, mad, fearful. And so you have to basically find a source you trust for 15 minutes a day and then leave it alone. Otherwise, it will steal your brain.